Giving us his perspectives on expectations from the meeting starting Monday next week is Economist Dr. Boniface Chizia. Good morning to you, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Harriet, for having me.
So, looking at those issues now, where do you think Emefiele's committee should start from?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that certainly this time it's not going to be a whole decision. So, last time I was here, I did say that it's going to be a whole decision. I think that at this time, definitely, certainly, I will expect that there'll be some changes. So we'll start from there. Like you did say, observing your intro, there are so many things that have happened in the interim that would challenge, the committee, would make them sort of think out of the box, and to begin to make some changes. We must have some changes. As you said, for instance, if you look at the listing of
FGM bonds,
the bonds, and again, that's also, I think it's also it's good to also underscore the fact that the president also came on to say that there'll be no more further devaluation of the naira. And when you now bring that in, and you remember that the last time there was discussion about this, I read in the social media that two members of the committee, my friend doing Salami and one Professor Uche, were all saying that we needed to readjust the value of the naira, of course, which means devalue the naira. They were against the issue of disallowing access to the foreign exchange of some products and so on and so forth. Now, if you bring in that, factor that in, and then the Treasury's single account also is important. If you look at that, and you look at the drain, which that has represented, for the banks, and then you say to yourself, so how is that going to impact on the reserves? So today we still have reserves for public sector at 31%, and so public sector's fund, it's not going to be drained out of the system.
Yeah, but do you think that the banks? I was having a conversation with Harry Boy a couple of days ago, and he said he remarked at the fact that I seem to be having sympathy for the banks. But technically, should the banks have our empathy at this time?
Yes, I think so. I think that my friend Henry Boyo, I think he has his stake. He believes that the banks are not having it rosy and so on. They get cheap money and then they put it on treasury bills and so on. But I think that's, we have to be very careful. I think that the banks, it's the goose that lays the golden egg. You don't want to kill it. So if you, it's a thriving sector. But I think that this so much money is going to be drained from the banks. Obviously, it's going to impact on their profitability. And so if you're talking about the MPC meeting, and so you have to say to yourself that obviously then the reserves with regard to public sector deposits, which had already gone, as soon as we're having challenges with the oil market, and then we're having problems with earnings, and we're having problems with the Federal Account Allocation Committee, the monies that went into that and was shared. Public sector money is, dwindled. So it's interesting. I was surprised to note that at one point, did you say 2 trillion naira was drained out of the system because of this Treasury single account.
1.2 trillion naira.
1.23. Yes. 1.23 naira was drained out of the system. And so, if all that's going to happen, so like I was going to say, the banks, we have to be sympathetic with the banks, because if the banks start having problems, then it's not good for anybody. They pay interest, they do everything, they employ so many people. I think that we have to be very careful with what we do. So the monetary policy, if you look at the indices, certainly that reserve, I think, should now is unnecessary. Yes, I mean, that if you don't have public sector funds, then there will be no an index saying that so much money should be kept with the central bank, public sector, that's going to go. And then if you now look at the challenge which the banks are facing, you have to say to yourself, even the public sector reserves, recently it's hiked up, almost more than 10%. And you can say to yourself, it's not about time for us, to reverse that increase. So I think that we have to be very careful, with thinking that the banks are profitable, and I think the banks are challenged. I think that we have to make sure that if there's anything, that we have to be going the extra mile to make sure that the banks remain profitable. It's one of the very and most identified profitable sector in the economy.